Welcome to this session on the hyper-personalized ad revolution. We have a terrific team here, all leaders from in their fields. Before I sort of kickstart the session, it's important for us to get a perspective of where the ads landscape is today. Digital advertising is a $13 billion business and expected to double in the next 4 years. And largely this growth is expected to be fueled by increased internet usage, smartphone penetration, and the expansion of e-commerce. Moreover, the sheer cultural diversity and multitude of languages and dialects present an interesting opportunity for hyper-personalized ads. Also, I must say, for the uninitiated, hyper-personalized ads are real-time, dynamic messages tailored to individual users based on their behavior, preferences, and context. And unlike traditional ads, they rely on continuous data to create one-to-one communication that feels timely and relevant. And clearly India is a fertile ground for some of these trends. With 1.4 billion people, it's a dynamic learning lab for marketeers. Across its urban centers and rural heartlands, India offers a number of stories, aspirations, and cultural nuances. Hamara Bajaj to Cadbury's Kuch Kaas Hai, if you remember, to Liril. And today we are seeing another revolution, this time powered by digital and social media. And the evolution of Indian advertising has been, transformational of sorts. Even as we embrace precision tools and real-time targeting, we find ourselves nostalgic for those classic jingles that even decades later continue to resonate and kind of, play in the mind. In such a complex and vibrant market, a campaign can be a spectacular success or a huge failure, offering lessons at a scale few other countries can match. And I think, the flavor of the season, artificial intelligence, is already rewriting the rules of creativity and personalization. Hybrid experiences are in many ways redefining the digital world, and perhaps most importantly, today's consumers are no longer passive participants, they are active co-creators demanding authenticity, relevance at every interaction. It would also be important, and I'll kind of end my monologue after this very quick point. Even as India shapes its new data protection regime through the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the way we define balance between innovation, trust, and compliance will have lasting consequences for the future of digital advertising. Beyond a point, obviously, you can't get too intrusive. What is that line of intrusion? There are a whole bunch of sensitivities that ad creators and ad agencies need to keep in mind, even as they look at newer ways to reach the consumer. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to have an outstanding panel with us. And my first question, without wasting too much of time, is to you, Rishabh. And, we have X introducing a whole host of newer formats, right? So you have audio spaces, video, to long-form posts, and all of them seem to have an integrated layer of Grok AI, your sort of, your creation, in-house sort of AI. And across the platform, there seems to be a lot of sort of excitement and vibrancy. So the question is, how should brands rethink their storytelling approach, especially as multilingual content and regional trends, become sort of, widely prevalent?
Thank you. Hopefully I'm audible. And thank you so much, Chetan, for having us here. And also to the Ministry and the IMI team for making X part of the event. It's a great question, and I'll try and unpack that. I think for X, the answer is actually rooted into some of the principles of the questions. For us, the transformation of the company was quite important to be able to cater to India as a country, and for a country that has such a diverse linguistic framework. It is important that we as a platform first evolve to be able to have text, video, audio, live, as what we call as expanding the creative portfolio, whether it's for creators, people like ours, or brands. And there's no surprises that for India, that is probably a combination of multiple countries within this one myopic country. What we have seen, the way the regional trends and the regional stories amplify on our platform, they are far greater than any content that we see. And sometimes when we look at year on X, right, most of the brands, they look at how the year went by. If you think about a reality show, Big Boss Tamil, actually gets far more conversation than the actual Big Boss show. Or if you look at Alu Arjun, Pushpa 2, Devkara, I mean, all these are just probably validations of today. As much as we still call it a regional trend, is actually a global trend. We can still divide this into regional and national as marketers, but the audience just keeps us honest. And for us, that's the biggest excitement. So Virat Kohli can be the topic tomorrow. India versus Australia could be a topic tomorrow, but then still some of the regional conversations will outweigh that. And for brands, the few things I will leave for the audience who probably are leads in their creative fields is for you to find the balance in your content and creative strategy is to be able to appreciate the power of text, which obviously means by brevity, and speak in the local nuance and local languages. I think we still quite are head fast in creating a campaign that is from a lens of nation versus to be able to really take the local nuance, the local cultures, and the sub-communities, and far more importantly, to integrate voice. I think 90% of the India appreciate voice and vernacular in the way brands will speak to themselves. And lastly, as I close it, I think to be able to really measure and listen, it's very important when you're looking at this word's largest focus group, where as a brand and a marketer, you can see whether your communication is really resonating. And if not, you should be agile enough to pivot and make regional advertising sort of outweigh what you will call as an integrated campaign.
Thanks a lot for that. And, question to Satya now. Google with its tremendous spread and range across formats, clearly sort of a leader and way ahead of the pack. What are the, from your vantage point, what are the sort of consumer behaviors and, and general sort of dynamics that you see in the digital advertising space?
Sure. No, thanks for that. And it would be remiss if I don't tell the audience that the gentleman here conducting the panel, Chetan, is actually the man with the second largest vocabulary in the country after Shashi Tharoor. So last night I prepared a lot. I prepared a lot for this by reading the dictionary. So here goes. So from Google and YouTube's vantage point, even before I start talking about consumer behavior, I just actually wanted to paint some consumer context. So I don't know if you all know this, but for the last 4 months, a very strange creature has started to be born in India, probably in a house near you. They're called as Gen Beta. So when 2025 started, all kids born from Jan onwards are now officially christened Gen Beta. And there are a lot of you in the audience, I know some of you personally, who probably have a Gen Alpha or maybe a Gen Z in your house, and you're just about coming to terms with the way they speak. But now, possibly in your little 750 square feet house in Andheri, there are 5 generations, all at the same time. Boomers, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Alpha, possibly Gen Beta as well. So with that change in consumer context, I don't even want to belabor on what Rishabh talked about from the language point of view. That is something that we have seen across. There are, some 2,800 dialects in the country and all of that. Now imagine all those 4 people trying to deliberately misunderstand each other in all those different languages, right? So with that context, I think a framework that we've been using with our customers and partners is a 4S kind of framework. And sorry to go all jargony on you, but we try to tell our advertisers and partners that consumers are actually streaming, scrolling, searching, and shopping all at the same time. And that actually helps them contextualize how to reach them a lot better. Case in point, you probably watched the match last night. Mumbai Indians won, so yoo-hoo. But while 90% of the people who saw that match were actually on a second screen at the same time, doing all of these 4 different types of behaviors. So we are watching a lot of this happen on YouTube and search. In fact, on search, they say that 15% of the search queries at any given point of time are new, right? Possibly by all of these people that I talked about. So in that kind of a context, for an advertiser and for a customer to have the right connection, that's where our partners are today, our advertisers are today, trying to figure out how to create hyper-personal ads that offer a lot of value to the customer. So those are some of the things that we're changing. And to quote a YouTube cricket tuber called Two Slogger, they say that the true cricket fan actually doesn't go to sleep after the match is over. They go on to YouTube to watch like the post-match analysis from a variety of YouTubers. So consumer behavior through the lens of YouTube and search is allowing us to partner with our customers in a lot of different, better ways.
So, so even as the consumer now kind of trapezes across and through various channels and formats, how do you think brands should kind of resist from, overly, intrusive ways of connecting with the consumer?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line? How do you resist that urge?
Yeah.
Does Google have any tenets there?
Yeah, I think with relevance comes responsibility. So as you're trying to reach your customer in the most relevant manner, you have to do it in the most responsible manner. So I think as a platform, there are a bunch of consumer tools that we have in place. For example, as a consumer, you can actually choose what ads you would like to want. So that's full power to the consumer that exists, and we see millions of consumers actually using that capability. I think as an advertiser, we are working with them constantly to try and tell them that, look, it's not just about targeting harder. It's actually about targeting smarter. It's about using not just demographic data, but also using more contextual cues. So how do they understand that they can actually reach a particular consumer by being around a particular piece of content? And in most cases, sometimes, and we had Gautam earlier who talked about brand deals. Brands are also recognizing that it's not just about a 30-second ad and a 5-second bumper and a search ad, but it's also about tastefully integrating their product in that piece of content. So I think our approach is to build a lot of responsibility-based tools on the platform. For example, you actually can't target someone below the age of 18 using personalized ads on the platform. And on YouTube Kids, you can't do that at all. So I think a lot of those inbuilt controls exist, power in the hand of consumer, and a lot of responsibility that we work along with the advertiser to make sure that they're able to do it in as unobtrusive a manner as possible.
So I'd like to bring in Prasun here, and all of us are great admirers of your writing. In fact, we did discuss your new theatrical production and how successful it has been across the globe. So congrats on that. So as a creative person, as a creative mind, how do you view hyper-personalization? Do you believe that there is still a degree of relevance? There is still the need for a creative campaign at times to sort of layer some of these precision tech-centric tools?
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I've been, I call myself a storyteller, whether be in advertising or otherwise in films or whatever things I do. I think I'm a storyteller. I am telling stories, either brand stories or human stories. Now, what are the challenges you face today, and what have we done? Just to understand from my perspective. See, you have all of us humans here, I mean, I refer to them as Gen this and Gen that because
So
that
I will
seems,
differ again when I get a chance.
yes. Gen, I mean, I feel that we have started referring to human beings in like robotic, that alpha and Gen. I don't refer to my mom like that. And I think as far as I remember, I have never spoken to the crowd. I remember I was writing a song for Tare Zami Par, which I know how many of you have heard. Tujhe sab hai pata hai na ma. Yeah, it's a. And I remember Amir is in the next room, just talking. And normally in scripts we have things, descriptors written there, like there'll be a separation song here. And I kept on thinking it could be anything. It could be a generalized writing here that don't leave me, mom. And I thought I should dip into something which is very individualistic, very personal. Let me tell what I feel. And I went back to my childhood when my mom had to go for a training program. And I was very young and she left me with my dad and family. And I'd never been alone without my mom. So the first line I wrote was that I am scared of darkness. मैं कभी बतलाता नहीं पर अंधेरे से डरता हूं मैं मां. Now this was almost a confession of very personal kind, and I did not know that is going to connect with so many people out there. So I never tell stories, thinking of a robotic machine in front of me or a herd of people I'm talking to, or even an individual as very mechanical. What I mean by that is we have to understand the psychology of people, that if you hyper-personalize, means you know me too well. What have we done? We have taken the fragmented narrative of people and put them together and made a bigger narrative out of the digital footprint or whichever way we have collected the data. But now you know me too well. But I can tell you from a poet's experience that sometimes we do not like so much of familiarity. Imagine yourself singing a song with your friends, and your childhood friend comes there who knows you too well and says, "अरे तू तो गा नहीं सकता था यार, ये क्या तेरे को तो singing class से बाहर निकालते थे." You don't want to be reminded of that data at that time. You are too much immersed in exploring something new. So sometimes too familiarity is also not sought by the consumer. So we have to be careful when we talk about hyper-personalized data. Where is that it is anchored in? Also the self-confidence. Not that every time you're trying to stand out, sometimes you're trying to fit in. Now fitting in and standing out a difference. When you know me too well with my nuances, sometimes accepting oneself requires immense amount of confidence. I've seen in most successful people, the biggest trait after some time they tell, and this is a confession from very, very profound successful people, that I feel successful when I can be authentic and myself. Because most of the time you have a fear of rejection. So human psychology is not that simple that if you know me too well, you will be able to market too well. Because there is a distinction in that consumer's mind also, that what I want to be told and what I don't want to be told also. So when I tell stories, I remember all these things. Whether it's advertising, whether it's moment marketing, whether it's micro messaging, but I do not forget that all of us deep down have a certain emotional narrative. And that has a psychological need which also needs to be understood.
Absolutely. Satya, you want to react to that? Or
No, I just wanted to build on what he said. And I'm actually glad you used the word us towards the end, right? Because you started off with the word I. And that's actually the sea change that's happened in the ecosystem, which is it's not just I, or a select few who are able to then, convey what is going on in their mind on the basis of their origin story and their childhood, but it's moved to a collective us, right? The amount of content creators who are walking around these halls actually runs in the hundreds. And I think yesterday there was a number that was thrown out by our CEO which said that there are, I think, over 1 million channels now, and there are so many more who have more than 1 million subscribers. So the ability for platforms to take the individual stories of all of these people and allow them to communicate is allowing actually them to find smaller and bigger niches at the same time, right? And maybe the symptom of the times is also what is happening perhaps in the industry that you come from, where the kind of storytelling is actually making a lot of people look inwards as to what kind of story should we really be telling, because it came from a place of I am the one who knows how to tell stories, but that's not the case out there, because everyone is telling their stories and they're reaching out their audiences. So it's in that context that personalization of ads then comes in and helps a customer or an advertiser reach that consumer a lot better.
I'd like to bring in Mr. CVL Srinivas here, who's seen the advertising landscape evolve, over a period of time. And what is coming through very clearly is the need for brands to remain consistent, build trust, across formats. What do you think, the ideal sort of, what is the ideal manner in which some of these brands should conduct themselves, across formats to just build trust?
The other is, of course, authenticity, and the others have spoken about that as well. I think the minute you look and sound flaky, you get caught out immediately. So how can you really be authentic? The third, I would say, is adaptability. And again, adaptability, I think, has two dimensions to it. One is, obviously, you need to adapt your content to all kinds of formats, all kinds of platforms and all of that. But I also think adaptability needs to happen at a slightly higher level, which is your strategies themselves need to be adaptive. I mean, there are things which may not work and you may get to know in the afternoon, and you need to just throw it out and come up with something else. There's no point waiting for like 3 months and for the research agency to come and tell you that it didn't work. So how can you be a lot more nimble, agile, and build your systems and agencies in such a way that you're totally adaptable? And like we said, the consumer has a voice, so how can you always keep channels of communication open with the consumer? So I think, if you look at it, a lot of it is common sense, a lot of it is going back to the fundamentals, but I think it's what we need to focus on. And last but not the least, just picking up a little bit from what Prasoon said, I think sometimes we just get caught up in all of this talk around technology, data, AI, Gen AI, disruption, etc., etc. But what we've seen at very, very close quarters, even today, what really moves the needle on anything is just raw creativity. There's nothing more powerful in the world than a creative idea that can truly connect with the consumer. And the challenge, of course, is to ensure that with all this chaos out there, the creative idea thrives and just gets stronger.
So, on the subject of creativity, Arun, Meta has done quite a bit in terms of just building the creator ecosystem. And, you have this huge community of influencers, right? So, what role does creativity play in this, entire, landscape, in this entire domain? And how does kind of Meta see this world?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on the panel. I think, we are, I would say, in a new age of marketing. I guess it's constantly evolves, right? Like if you just go back, even possibly before, let's say television was there, you literally, remember brands were built, in an era where you literally had to go, door to door or do wall paintings, etc. in rural India. And, then you obviously started having broadcast mediums with one channel, multiple channels, and then, of course, the unleashing, I would say, of digital and performance marketing and, obviously where we are today. So I think we are, I think if you look at today, firstly, I think where we are specifically with Instagram and Reels, Reels is the largest short-form video platform, that's out there. India is actually home to the largest number of Reels produced as well globally. So we're also a content powerhouse in that sense. And equally, obviously we have the largest number of people, on the Reels platform, both on Facebook and Instagram in the world here. What's happened with that is that today there are millions and millions of creators, who are putting out content, which, each of us get, at scale, basis our genres and our interests. And I think what's happened clearly is, they are speaking directly to the audience. It sounds one-on-one. I don't think it's one-on-one because obviously they're also one-to-many in that sense. In the similar genres, for example, you have creators on travel, creators on beauty, creators on fashion and whatnot. And I think, what's interesting, I'll give you an example. Content is out there in 14 to 15 languages, and I'm not even counting dialects now. So you have creators, who are there in Odia and Assamese and Bhojpuri, and these were possibly, not as mainstream, given the, let's say we are still, like I still remember, when we have to go and push advertisers that, listen, I mean, digital is not only English and Hindi. I mean, the content that people are viewing is in Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Oriya. How can you actually start building brands as well here? And these are, as I said, it's a new age of marketing. So you need to figure a way out of how to tap into this. The second thing, depending on how you see it, of course, but, I agree with Prasoon also that not every Gen Z is Gen Z in that sense. It's more, I guess, who you are as an individual and how you identify, with trends and, let's say what your values are. But having said that, at least on the face of it on data, the younger audiences clearly are more influenced by more authentic, brand voices than just me saying I'm the best car or the best makeup or, the best fashion. So clearly they want, a second voice, in terms of validation and, to all the points that were expressed before, people are on multiple screens looking at multiple kinds of information. So this is another big ecosystem that's only growing and is here to stay. So what we are seeing is clearly they have significant influence on purchase outcomes as well today, right? So for example, most people at least who are, in the younger audiences today, almost 80% of them have bought something after seeing a creator recommend it, right? More than 90% of them actually, while they've seen the message somewhere else, believe that, this again adds weight to, why I should buy this. So I think clearly they're here to stay. I think from what we are definitely trying to do, for example, I think literally a couple of weeks ago, we launched something called the Edits app, which I'm pretty sure for creators, which is an ultra high definition, short form video content app in some sense, which you can produce, clean up using AI, the background, etc., so that it's easier for you to upload content. I'm pretty sure India will be, on top of the charts there as well in terms of usage of such apps. So I think with the tools and technologies that, are there, we clearly see this, as a pivotal part of marketing. And, I can tell you this again, working, in fact, this week, meeting some of the largest consumer companies, with them. Everyone is figuring out saying, how can I bring this into my brand strategy? Because it's no longer a broadcast medium. I need surround sound in some sense, with authentic voices which are able to connect, for example, on saying, even in the, let's say, hot weather in Tamil Nadu, what's the right makeup? These are things like, let's say, I used to work in a consumer company. We were never able to customize messages, basis regions, etc., and benefits. But I think a creator is able to obviously land that message to say that, this will not, obviously, you're not going to sweat much, this is light makeup, vis-a-vis, and, really create the look. So I think they're here to stay, and clearly we think this is going to be a significant powerhouse, that will build on what, marketing is all about.
So Rishabh, as Arun mentions, you have India positioning itself as a global content hub. And, in a situation such as this, and when we are talking about hyper-personalization, what could be done to really amplify and propagate and push our cultural exports, spanning Bollywood, music, gaming, and perhaps what kind of policy support is needed to sustain this growth?
I think before I answer that, I think listening to Prasoon when he was mentioning about that song, I think Prasoon was being very modest, saying that few of us have heard that song. I think billions would have heard that song. And the reason I start with that is...
You want to sing that?
I think if you want probably fewer people in the audience, I can try. But Prasoon can probably sing those few lines as we close the session.
That'll be nice.
But the reason I kicked that off with that is... I think the diversity of India, which obviously no one needs to know from us, but when you think about Waves, which is being positioned as our way of sort of becoming a global entertainment hub, there's a lot that we have that needs to be packaged and broadcasted to the global diaspora, and diaspora that is even beyond people from India. And whether that's music, whether that's sports, whether that's entertainment, there are enough stories here that can really capture imagination of people outside. And I think this event is a testament to that. I mean, you have world leaders under one roof, inspired and captivated by stories that we are sharing. And I think to the point that the panel made, nothing can unify a nation than a powerful story. I think it is up to us to create stories that can either unite or can divide, right? We're already in a world that is extremely polarized, from whether it's a policy standpoint, which I'm sure Chetan you would be far more closer to than me. But the few provocations I will leave is, I think for storytellers, as we all like to call ourselves, for publishers, creators, and companies, I think it is really important to preserve what India is about and take that ahead beyond borders. And I'm not saying that's not happening. I think that's happening. If you look at what Dangal did to Indian cinema, if you look at where our stories are today at the stage of Oscars, and if you look at the prominence we have at Cannes, I think there are enough testimonials out there for us to really propagate that, but build stories that are incredibly diverse, that really captures the imagination. And I think the government itself is actually empowering those policies for that to happen.
A question to CVL. Do you really think this is a practical point of view? I mean, you can be idealistic and, this sounds great, right? But when you're there trying to sort of focus on the bottom line, trying to ensure that you give your best to the brand that is having a dialogue with you, where do all of these sort of basic human values and tenets really surface? Do they surface at all, or is it best left to these conversations and and forums such as this?
No, I think it's absolutely fundamental and core to any exercise, whether we're planning a campaign or launching a product or whatever else, to keep it at the very core. I think it's all about the lens we're looking at things from. If you're looking at everything from a very short-term ROI lens, that you need to make a profit at the end of the same day that you advertise, then you have one approach, but then that may not take you too far. At the end of the day, I think it's realizing that all the fundamental principles, all the connect with the consumer, the creativity, etc., is like you're building a moat around your brand or building a moat around your company, which is then kind of impregnable in a way. And people are, there could be times when the brand fails or the brand does something wrong, but that's what kind of protects you in the long run. So it's like an insurance policy. I think some of these things are what will help a brand and an enterprise. And you look at data over the last century, stronger brand value always creates stronger enterprise value. So that's a given, right? And that's not going to change. So I think as long as you keep that in mind, and then of course, in this day and age, there's always a pressure for results, there's pressure for quarterly stock price, etc. So you also have to have a judicious mix of, what is commonly called performance marketing, where you kind of drive a lot of, direct action coming out of your brand, etc. But I think as long as the two go together, you are in a good place. Otherwise, you end up kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You may last for a day, you may last for a week, but you're not going to last forever.
I think this is probably the last question. I don't know, I have completely lost track of time. So, Arun, question to you. Just give us a sense of all the great stuff, exciting stuff happening on the AI front at Meta, because we get to hear a whole bunch of these things. And I think just a couple of days back, you launched an agentic AI to compete with ChatGPT or some such thing, right? So can you give us a lot more information on how you're seeing the world from an AI standpoint?
It'll take the whole day, so let me restrict AI in the context of hyper-personalization maybe. No, I think we launched what is called a standalone Meta AI app, which, basically you can download and you can ask it anything. Our vision is to make it the world's largest personal assistant to everybody on the planet, right? Because we already have 1 billion people, using Meta AI, on a monthly basis as we speak through WhatsApp and Instagram, etc., where you can see that blue circle there. Anyway, so coming back, I think AI is, at the core of possibly where we are today, and I'm sure in many other ways. But let me stick to how I see this really helping both hyper-personalization in some sense, as well as, creators. See, if you look back, right, and like, I don't think it's about one-on-one, firstly, to Prasun's point. I think it's more about cohorts. I'll give you an example of how, let's say, AI is playing here. If I follow cricket, for example, let's say, I'm sure most of us do as we speak with the IPL, and if I choose to really follow Virat Kohli as a cricketer, or let's assume Rohit Sharma as a cricketer, if I go back 3 years in time in Instagram, you'll really only get their posts. Now what's happened is, with all the advancements in tech, and while we've always been, I would say AI has always been the backbone of why Facebook and Instagram have been successful, because each of our feeds, for example, for the last couple of decades also has been different. But I think with the advancements in tech today, more than half the content that we see on Instagram and Facebook is not people you follow or not your friends, in some sense. It's actually AI recommended. So what happens in this case is, I actually, like, as I'm browsing, of course I'll get Virat and Rohit's reels or content, but I'll also start getting Sanju Samson and Tilak Verma, and of course Vaibhav Suryavanshi, and as long as anyone puts it out, because the engine knows I'm spending or dwell time on cricket is high. Similarly, let's assume I also follow Bollywood or I follow fashion, I get more and more of that content. It's a virtuous cycle. What we're seeing is, after this, the time spent on Facebook globally has gone up by 5%, 6%, Instagram by 5%, etc. Right? So it's also adding to more engagement, if I can say that, and it's more curated. So in some sense, therefore, tomorrow, if let's assume there is, a sports lover in that sense, and there is sports equipment being marketed, you're obviously able to, I would say, more broadly target the right set of people, because they're spending, as I said, more dwell time really on these reels. So that's really what's happening at the back end in terms of, where AI is really, I would say, really playing a role in how we consume content, if I can say that, right? And similarly, like I'm saying to all the other points I made, so given that it's in different languages, so if I say a lot more of Bhojpuri content, of course, low presto, I'll get even more Bhojpuri content, right? And if I'm also surfing, let's assume Bhojpuri and Hindi, you get a lot more there, right? So that's what's happening on a content side. On the creator side, what happens is that obviously they're able to, for example, they have tools like GenAI, etc., which you can now start creating assets, editing assets, etc. So clearly, you're able to possibly go live much faster, and these tools are now literally in their hands, in terms of what they can do to resize images, and put together a reel, etc. So these are tools, again, that, obviously will help in really going live much faster. So I think broadly, I would say, this is how it's going to play a bigger and bigger role in our lives. And I guess, hopefully we will, and I think creativity will still win, because it's not that just because AI is out there, that, it's going to rule, because clearly you're going to spend more time on what you think is creative or, what you find attractive, right? So I don't think it's actually going to, I would say, enhance, creativity reaching audiences, as a tool, and, it's certainly not going to be the death of creativity.
Hey, thanks a lot for that, and I think we've run out of time. So the 2 or 3 things that stand out, in this conversation is, one, even as marketing gets exciting, gets closer to the consumer, there is a huge sort of ethical dimension that companies and brands need to really focus on. There are, the human sort of element will continue to remain sort of relevant. Creativity will continue to win the day for brands and successful campaigns. And 3, there's no stopping AI. Despite, all of this and, the dilemmas that we throw and the dilemmas that surface, what is very clear is there is no stopping technology, no stopping AI, no stopping marketeers who really want to get to the skin of the consumer. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to thank you for being a patient audience. Thanks a lot.